Uncut. What's up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of COASTER-net Uncut. We've been away for a little bit of time here. We got the holidays going on. We got all this craziness going on. But as the fans have been clamoring, Danny, we are going to get back to the European extravaganza, if you will. The plan here is I think we got like 5 episodes left. And
we got a lot to go through still.
This trip was
4 months ago.
But I think we're gonna release one every single day here. So we're gonna end out the new year with the European vacation, and we're gonna finish all of this up before the new year. And then come 2020, we're gonna have a brand new relaunch of Uncut. So there's some exciting stuff coming on. Not really that exciting. New graphics, maybe. Maybe not even new graphics, maybe just new colors. So.
Oh, I was hoping you were going to say new hosts.
Oh, wow, new hosts. Oh, man, that would be exciting. A lot of people lining up to get rid of us. But tonight, Danny, we are going to be talking about 2 parks, 2 little small parks here. Hansa Park out of Germany and Tayto Park out of Ireland. So I don't know which one. I think you did Tato Park first in the trip, right? That's
yes.
What you did?
Yes, so Tato Park was actually our very, very first stop as far as the theme parks go on the whole big 16-day trip. I may have mentioned it before, but we actually flew into Frankfurt, Germany, because that's where we left from on the way home. It was actually cheaper to book a round-trip ticket to and from Frankfurt and then do one-way trips so the rest of the way as opposed to doing 4 one-ways. So 5 flights was cheaper than 4 because we had a round-trip ticket in there. So we flew across the pond to Frankfurt, Germany, sat at the Frankfurt airport for about 10 hours from like 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. or whatever it was. I don't know. It wasn't quite that long. But then we took a plane over to Dublin. And Tato Park is about 25 minutes or so outside of Dublin proper. So we stayed right there by the Dublin airport. Actually explored a little bit in and around the Dublin area, went into the city a little bit, also went to the Howth Harbor and saw the beautiful clay cliffs of Howth Harbor the night before, and then went to Tato Park the next morning, and we're actually flying out of Dublin into Amsterdam that evening. So we didn't have much time at Tato Park, but it is a smaller park, just a couple of coasters, just a couple of big rides. And so Tato Park is actually a very new park. It opened in 2010. So it is a very new park. And Tato is actually, they're sort of like the Frito-Lay of Europe there. So they are a potato chip type brand over there. And so Tato is the brand. And similar to how at Hershey Park at Chocolate World, you can go on the little fake out factory tour, there is actually an attraction where you can walk through the potato chip factory there in the back of Tato Park, which is kind of interesting. So a little bit of a different experience you don't get everywhere.
Do you smell the potato chips? Because I grew up in an area that every time we jumped on the expressway to go somewhere, Jay's Potato Chips, which is a very Chicago brand of potato chips, the factory was right off the expressway, so you would smell the potato chips. And it's a very distinct smell. If you smelled it, you would know this is potato chip.
No, not so much. Now, of course, now we didn't sit down and have a big meal at Tato Park because we knew we didn't have a lot of time. But on our way out, we did grab a couple of different bags of chips. They had all different varieties, right? Of course, I got a barbecue style because I'm a barbecue guy. They had some salt and vinegar, which is a very Pennsylvania thing. We got a couple of different kinds. We had all sorts of different, I think between, it was Adam Beard, Sue, and myself. It was the 3 of us at this point. Chris had not yet joined us. But we had like 5 or 6 different kinds and different bags between us. So we were all passing them around, which was interesting. All very good. We enjoyed them quite a bit. Let's talk about rides at Tato Park. Now, there's not a ton. Now, it was quite windy and chilly when we were there. So we elected not to get soaking wet on their brand new log flume, but it looks very highly themed and heavily themed, Viking themed, if you will. Very impressive looking on a nicer day. We certainly would have probably would have taken a ride on it, but it had a very long line. It had over an hour wait, so we bypassed that. in favor of a few other things. Just a couple of coasters. The Ladybird Loop, which is one of those SBF Visa spinning coasters. You play with your lights there.
Playing with my lights here. I'm trying to find a good color. I don't know.
Make it green since we're talking about Ireland.
There you go, green.
You can change it to yellow or red when we get to $100. So Ladybird Loop, your standard SBF Visa group coaster. Flight School was actually a fairly heavily themed kiddie coaster, a junior coaster, sort of like a roller skater model. If you're familiar with that one at Kentucky Kingdom, where the station looks like an honest-to-goodness airplane terminal. Actually very, very cool. Some topiaries in the ride area shaped like airplanes, which is kind of cool. Very, very beautiful park in all. Very pretty park. Nice scenery. They do have animals as well there, so it sort of doubles as a zoo type attraction in the one area. And they have a giant topiary that is carved out like their mascot, which is the big potato, the plump potato guy, which is quite fun. Oh, they have a Vortex Tunnel, which is one of those big long tunnels where you just stand on the bridge and the tunnel's going around, right?
Yeah.
So they have one of those, which is kind of interesting. They have a lot of weird, quirky stuff here. They even have, if you're familiar with Rowdy Bear Mountain down in Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg area, where they have the mountain coaster, they also have the mountain gliders. They have a set of those, which had a very, very long line because they're very long and they're single person. So we did not get a chance to go on those.
Would you count those as a credit, though?
I count the one at Rowdy Bear. Okay. So I probably would have counted them, but we did pass those up. The big ride that everybody wants to know about at Tato Park, and the only reason that you would maybe want to visit Tato Park at this point is, and we found out the correct pronunciation because we asked, is the big gravity group wooden coaster Q Cullen. We've said Choo Choo Lane for quite some time on this show, and the correct pronunciation is Q Cullen. So there you go. It's actually a little bit easier than it looks. So Q Cullen is the name of the coaster, and this is one that I had some. Oh,
yeah, I was going to say this is one that you were really anticipating being pretty good. So I'm curious to see how that actually ended up for you.
Yes. So this is one that I actually had in the road trip rundown. If we go way back to that, this is actually the one that I had number 2 on my wood coaster list for the anticipated, and it comes in at number 5, not because it wasn't good. I think that's a testament to how good the other rides were on this trip. I've already talked a little bit about Troy from Toverland in a previous show and how that ride was very, very good. But Troy was not my favorite wood coaster on the trip either. We haven't talked about Vodon Timber Coaster yet. So Vodon Timber Coaster actually was my favorite wood coaster on the trip, but we'll talk about that in the Europa Park show. So Q Cullen, the way that I would describe this is the first half of it is sort of like, if you take a lot of the good airtime that you find on a ride like Mind Blower, the first half of it has very much a Mind Blower type feel, not in the roughness point, because Mind Blower is a very, very rough ride. Yeah. But if you take the airtime and the out of control feeling that you have in Mind Blower, Q Cullen has a lot of that in the first half. And to sort of describe to you the layout, and I'm struggling to find a really good picture on RCDB that can kind of describe this to you. What Q Cullen actually does is it goes up the lift hill and it does like one big circle, right? So the layout is like a big circle. And then it does this past 90-degree overbank turn, and then it comes back and it goes over a big hill and it does a second loop around that same circle on the inside of the first. And then it does sort of like a half circle, like a half circuit again in the infield of the two big circuits. And then it goes back to the station. Q Cullen is a ride that, to me, that last half a circle didn't need to be there. It didn't have quite the oomph at the very end of the ride that you like to see. It sort of died out. And I don't know if it's because the Timberliner trains are so much lighter than some of the other trains. We've talked about that with Voyage before, how putting the Timberliners on Voyage significantly decreased the airtime because the Timberliner trains are not as heavy as the PTC trains. So towards the end of the ride, it had a lot less speed.
Mm-hmm.
This ride, more than any other ride I've ridden with the Timberliners, demonstrated why the Timberliners are not a good fit on Voyage. Because this is a very long ride, and it's almost too long for what those trains can do. Now, the trains are very comfortable. The airtime in the first 2/3 of the ride is very, very strong. There's some really good lateral forces. There is an overbank turn that kind of goes over the station that comes back, and then there's a big hill after that overbank turn. That big hill, you can visually see the speed die out just a little bit as it goes over that big hill, and it never quite gets all the momentum back that it loses over that big hill, and that's what sort of causes the ride to peter out just a little bit at the end. If the ride ended after those two big circuits, this is a flawless ride. I think this is a near perfect ride for what it is. In terms of having that little extra half a loop, there's a little bit of floater airtime there, but it doesn't have the out of control feeling that the first 2/3 of the ride have. So to me, Q Cullen is one of those rides that it's one of those things where you ride it and it's like, boy, if we had just an extra 5 miles an hour at the very beginning, and we had a little bit more through the entire thing, and it's not even so much that you want more throughout the entire ride, it's just you want more at the end. So it's one of those things. It's 105 foot tall. If this ride was 115 and the rest of it was the way it was, I think this is an absolutely spectacular ride. It's 3,600 feet long, which again is pretty long for a wood coaster of that size, and to have the Timberliners.
Yeah, especially with Timberliners.
With the Timberliners.
And that was the thing with Voyage. When they tried to put Timberliners on that, they just didn't like the experience because of the extra weight that it slowed down, I guess, too much.
Yeah, the Timberliners are much lighter than the PTCs, so they don't have as much inertia to get through that entire course. According to RCDB, Q Cullen is a 2-minute and 45-second ride. It's a very, very long ride. And according to RCDB, 19 airtime points. There is a lot of airtime on this ride. There's a few spots of really good lateral forces on this ride. It's mostly airtime, but there are some good lateral forces. There's a couple of really good head choppers. There's a double down in the middle of the ride, which is very, very good right before you go into that weird overbank turn. It's funny. That overbank turn is one of those things where you start to turn, and then you get to the point where you're past 90 degrees, and you just started doing the shimmy type of thing as you get past 90 degrees. It's a 115-degree overbank curve according to this. And there's two tunnels as well mixed in. There's one at the bottom of the first drop where there's sort of like a speed hill, and then there's one towards the end of the ride. But that 115-degree overbank turn is one of those chuckle moments on the ride where you're having a good time and you're having fun, and then you go through this and you just start shimmying back and forth. And it's not rough. It's just a little bit of a shimmy where you bounce back and forth in the turn, and it's really, really fun. And then you go through the rest of the ride, and it's sort of one of those where you catch your breath just a little bit before the ride's over, and you want to sort of scream into the brakes and hit those brakes hard. And it's kind of one of those where you sort of just coast into the brakes, no pun intended. So for me, Q Cullen, I would say this is a ride that met expectations. I wouldn't go so far to say that it exceeded expectations, but it certainly wasn't a disappointment. We enjoyed this ride an awful lot. Rode it many, many times. I want to say we rode this ride 7 or 8 times. The line was fairly short. They were running 2 trains the entire time, so even when the line was moving, even when it was a little bit longer, I think the most we waited for it was maybe 15 minutes. There were a couple points where we waited 1 or 2 trains and got on. And did for the front seat a couple times, which was really, really nice. Very, very friendly staff at Tato Park overall. And the manager that we asked did not hesitate when we asked how to pronounce the ride when we were getting off the one time. And she said, it's pronounced Q Cullen with a smile. And she said, have a nice day. So Tato Park, really nothing to
get away from me.
Yeah, right. Americans. But and one of the interesting things was, and we were hoping we would experience this a little bit, quite a few patrons and employees speaking Gaelic, which is the native tongue in Ireland. A lot of people just assume that it's English, but Gaelic is one of those things where it's sort of a native local thing that they don't want to let die, but because of England and Scotland and English just being the natural language there, it seems to sort of fall off. But we were quite pleased to hear quite a bit of Gaelic around us while we were in the park. So we did get a little bit of that experience. All the road signs are still written in Gaelic as well as English. So we did get a little bit of that Irish experience. Cool. So it was fun. We had a great time at Tato Park and really enjoyed Q Cullen. For me, it's a ride that kind of sits in my 20s. For me, it would be, if we're talking about Thrilling 32 here, since that's coming up, this is a ride that if we were building a Thrilling 32 off of just my wood list, this ride would be in my Thrilling 32. Wouldn't be in by much, maybe would be in by 4 or 5 spots, but this is a ride that's in, the 25 to 30 area for me, which, looking at my list, I don't know, 150, roughly 150 wood coasters. Top 25 to 30 is still pretty good. So for me, this is a ride that to me met expectations, didn't overly exceed expectations, didn't disappoint. It was what I thought it would be, and I was happy with that.
Well, and you kind of you kind of had high hopes for this one. I remember watching the video when you were talking about going on this trip and doing that pre-show. I remember you talking about this one, and you're kind of like, "Oh, this one looks pretty legit." We watched the point of view video, and then when you actually rode it, it was kind of a bit of a letdown. And even if you say it's still high up,
it was just that last part. It was just that last go around. It was like, boy, I just wish it had a little bit more oomph right there at the end.
But that's kind of like the story of the Timberliners too. Is I've never ridden a Timberliner ride that I was like really in love with, like Wooden Warrior's good.
Well, Wooden Warrior, Rorosaurus, Switchback, even Mind Blower, they're all relatively short rides, so they don't necessarily have the opportunity. And maybe that's why we haven't seen a ton of big rides with them on it. Now, we've over in China and whatnot, we've seen a lot, the Jungle Trailblazers and those types of rides. We've seen a lot of bigger rides with them on it, but none over here really. For the most part, the Timberliners that our experience with the Timberliners is they're on smaller rides. And I think maybe that's where they ought to be. Again, I don't think they're a bad thing for this ride, but if you had like PTCs or even Millennium Flyers on this ride, just heavier trains, you probably have a little bit more of an intense experience. So I don't know. Take that as you will. It's not as intense as a Mind Blower. Mind Blower is very, very intense. And just on that alone, I would say that maybe I prefer Mind Blower just a little bit more because Mind Blower is a very, very intense ride, and I like very intense rides. It's certainly much smoother.
I am not a fan of Mind Blower. So you saying that makes me say I do not need to ever take a trip.
Well, you're not a Mind Blower fan. I feel like the whole speed thing is a reason that you wouldn't like this ride. No. And if it didn't have that extra half a loop at the end, I feel like this is a ride that you would really enjoy. Me and Adam were kind of
describing Kentucky Flyer to me right now.
No. It's much, much better than that ride. It is much, much better than that ride. This ride is better than a Wooden Warrior or a Rorosaurus or a Switchback or a Kentucky Flyer. It is much better than that than those rides. But I am a big Mind Blower fan. Sue is not a Mind Blower fan, and she much prefers this one. So take that for what it is.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So let's move on to Hansa Park, which is actually is right on the Baltic Sea in Sirksdorf, on the northern shore of Germany, actually just across the Baltic Sea from Denmark. So. Boy, this is a beautiful park. This is a gorgeous park. The buildings and the scenery just make you feel like you're in old school, small town Europe. And this is a park that has sort of grown slowly over the years. This actually started in the mid-'70s as Legoland Sirksdorf and then quickly lost the Lego branding. and just became Hansa Land, and now it is Hansa Park. It is one of these parks that is quickly expanding. They have added quite a few signature attractions in recent years, in the last decade or so. So this is a quickly growing park here. And this is certainly a park that we pegged early on in the trip as a park that we would return to for a couple of reasons. Several of them good and one not so good. So if you were following me on social media and you were messaging me throughout the trip, you might already know that the one big ride that we did not get to ride on the entire trip was Vortex Tunnel. That was kind of the big ride at this park, the 2015 Gerstlauer Infinity Coaster. There's a lot of different things going on with this ride that I'm not going to go into because, one, we didn't ride it, and two, there is a spoiler aspect of this ride that I know about that other people may not know about. It was down for the entire day. It was supposedly a mechanical issue. A few friends of ours who went to this park a few days before us did ride it. And then we knew that it was back open later on while we were still in Germany on the coaster crew part of the trip. So we don't know how long it was down for, but it was down the entire day that we were at Hansa Park. So that is the only big ride that we did not get to ride on the entire trip. And I said, and this was pretty early on in the trip, I said to our group, because it was myself, Sue, Adam, our friend Chris was with us, also our friend Tony. So there were several of us, and I said to them, look, if this is the only big ride on this trip that we don't get to ride out of close to 100 coasters, I will sign for that right now. If we get to ride Terran and Black Mamba and Expedition G-Force and everything at Europa Park, I will sign for missing this ride and getting all those others. Yeah. Because when you have a 16-day trip, you're going to 14 parks, you're not going to get them all. That's just the way it works. Yeah. On the England trip, some people didn't get Kumali at Flamingo Land because it literally operated for one cycle during our ERT before it broke for the rest of the day. I know Adam didn't get that one, and I did. And then at Alton Towers, Rita was down almost the entire day, and I didn't get to ride Rita because we elected to go to Nemesis Night Rides, and Adam and Josh, they got on Rita. So you're not going to get them all. So Vortex Tunnel was certainly one we wanted to ride, was one we were excited for, but that's a new ride. It's not one that I've been wanting to ride for years and years and years, like an Expedition G-Force potentially. It was built in 2015, so it's only been around a few years. So I was able to live with that. Frustrated, yes. A little upset, yes. Not heartbroken. I can live with that one. So moving on, let's talk. So that was the bad reason that we would say, hey, we're going to go back to Hansa Park because we want to ride that ride. Let's get to all the good now. Like I said, Hansa Park, a very, very beautiful park. Excellent beer selection. The weather fought us all day at Hansa Park. We had some on and off rain, which is pretty common, I think, in this area near the Baltic Sea. They're pretty used to getting some rain showers. We had rain on and off throughout our entire day. And when we had rain, we hopped in, we grabbed a pretzel and a beer, and we sat down, wait for the weather to clear and the rides to reopen. And we did that 2 or 3 different times. And, lots of good food and beer selections at Hansa Park. So definitely a thumbs up there. Lots of well-shaded areas for when the sun did poke out, and also for outdoor protection from the rain. Some very nice gardens in the middle area of the park where a lot of their kiddie rides are. Very, very beautiful overall. Very heavily themed throughout the entire area as well.
The castle is really cool. There's a cool picture of the castle on RCDB. The two spires.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So that's the main entrance. That's the front gate right there. So that is the front gate, and then you see the little the village houses on either side. It's sort of like a little miniature Main Street. Yeah. So if you're on RCDB looking at a few of the photos, those 2 twin spires with the brick buildings and the black spires, the cathedral-like looking areas, that is the main entrance to the park. The main entranceway, the pathway too, is sort of these, they look like pavers, but they're not symmetric like you would see at a Cedar Fair or Six Flags park. They look like it's sort of like shattered glass. which is pretty cool. So that's really, really nice. The other cool thing, they do have like a band playing music out in the front gate, and they have a clock. They have a clock right there in the flower bed when you walk into the main entrance of the park. They have a big clock to show you the time, and in the flowers underneath the clock is the date. So every day they change out the flowers to show today's date, which is kind of cool. So just little details like that are kind of cool. So that's from the whole park perspective, right? So let's talk about some of the coasters here. I'll go in the order that they're on RCDB, and I'm going to skip over one of them, which is kind of the big one, and we'll talk about that in more detail. So Crazy Mine is sort of their Maurazuna Wild Mouse coaster, similar to the one that you would find at like a Dorney Park or Six Flags New England. Some heavy mine theming around it. You go through some mine shafts. There's mine scenery around it. It's not enclosed or anything, but it's well themed, so that's cool. Flug von Novgorod we'll talk about at the end because that's sort of the headliner aside from Schwerdis Kernen. Kleine Tsar is their kiddie coaster that translates to Little Tsar. Nothing to write home about there. Nessie, previously known as the Nessie Super Roller Coaster. Nessie is their Anton Schwarzkopf double loop or looping coaster, not double loop. It's a single loop. A shorter Schwarzkopf ride, but in the back row, this ride has Shockwave at Six Flags Over Texas like airtime in a couple of spots. The first drop, the second drop, and there's also a drop into a tunnel at the end of the ride where there is a lot of airtime and signature of Schwarzkopf rides. That loop is powerful. There is a lot of positive G's in that loop. So there's also like an airtime hill hidden in the middle of this ride, which is really, really good as well. And this is a 1980 ride. This is an older ride, but certainly a very, very fun one at that. We rode this ride a couple of times, named after the Loch Ness Monster, right, which is called Nessie. So Nessie gets 2 thumbs up for me for sure. Rossinder
layout too.
What's that?
It's a really unique layout too.
It is. When you think, Schwarzkopf single looper, you think like the what is it, Silver Bullet at Frontier City? What's that? Yeah. I think that layout's called the Silver Arrow layout or something, or the Looping Star layout. This is not one of those. It is I think it's a custom. It doesn't have a model name to it, so I'm assuming it's a completely custom layout. It's got a nice double trip. It's got a very long triple helix at the end of the ride, which leads into the last airtime. There's a speed hill in it. Andy, I know you love your speed hills. So Nessie is a very, very fun ride.
I love the Nessie thing you go into.
Yeah. So again, the stations again at this park are very, very well themed. So the station is themed to a castle. It's like a Scotland castle, right? Very, very dark inside the station. Some purple lighting in there. So when you're in the station, it's like the chandeliers are sort of like the flickering lights. And it's got very dim purple lighting, which the train is purple, and it looks like dragon scales. So it looks like it's a scaly train of sorts, and it's got purple banners and everything with a picture of the Loch Ness Monster face smiling at you. Very, very medieval-like theme here. So very, very well done all the way around on a pretty standard ride, but a good ride. Rossinder Roland is their Bakoma Jr coaster. It has the Woodstock Express style train in the front. So this ride, it's a custom layout. It reminds me of what you see at the Mall of America with the Ripsaw ride or Nickelodeon Streak, whatever it's called now, Orange Streak, where it kind of just goes around. but it interacts with the Nessie coaster. So the lift hill and first drop goes through the loop of the Nessie coaster, and then it goes all the way around. So if you're lucky, you can ride this ride and you can actually go through the loop while the Nessie train's going around the loop, and you'll interact with the Nessie train. And it goes around a lake, and it goes around their new drop tower, the Highlander. So there's lots of, this is sort of just your standard junior coaster that kind of goes around, but as a little bit of a unique experience with interacting with other rides and some good scenery there. Slav von Midgard is their newest kiddie coaster, which is from Gerstlauer. And it doesn't look like much, right? When you just look at it, it looks like, okay, you go up this lift hill, which is in a tunnel, and then you go down into a drop, and then you go over a lake, and then you kind of come back. This has to be the best themed kiddie coaster that I've been on, okay? So you're sitting in the station, and there's a projection screen that you see, and Slav von Midgard is like the serpent, right? And Midgard being Earth. If we're gonna go back to our Marvel stuff here for a minute, right? With Thor. But it's Viking themed, right? So it's like the Norse Viking type theme.
It's got like those battle shields, like Invader does on the side of the ship.
Yes, it's very similar to that. So you go into the show scene. There's a show scene sort of in the station. There's a video, and then you pull out into this area before the lift hill, and there's animatronics, right? There's Viking animatronics, and then you're going up the lift hill of this kiddie coaster. It's 20 feet tall, and there's like Mystery Mine type video playing at the top of the lift hill, right? And then you drop outside, and you drop outside, and you do your thing outside. And there's some really good scenery. There's a tunnel that you go through, like some bones and whatnot. And then there's an animatronic, is it like a dragon out in the middle of the lake? It's like a dragon type. It's the Slav von Midgard out in and the first time you go around, you sort of wake up the serpent, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get a second go around. Oh. So you go through the station and you go back into the area where the animatronics are, and the animatronics are telling you something different. So it's like the intro, and then the second time around, it's like the continuation, right? And then you get a different video up the lift hill, and then you go back through, and then the serpent is like awake, it's moving. I think it spits water at you even when you go around the second time. And this is all in a kiddie coaster. So it's a very, very fun ride, and it's just, these are the types of things that set apart these European parks a little bit from your standard American parks. Whereas if I ride a kiddie coaster that's 32 feet tall here at a park over here, it's kind of like the roller skater at Kentucky Kingdom. You just kind of go up and you do a few turns and you come back. And here at this little, one-off park in Germany, you've got animatronics, you've got screens, you've got more animatronics, you got multiple circuits, you have a pre-show in the queue, you have all these different things. That kind of make it a special experience, right? So this is one that we would have glossed over if we were just talking about some park in Texas or whatever. But just a little bit of effort here makes it a fun experience. So Slav von Midgard, definitely a thumbs up for me as well. All right, last one here is the Flug von Novgorod, which it translates to the Curse of Novgorod, which is Novgorod is a city in Russia, and so it's the curse of the city of Russia. So this is a very much in the way that Mystery Mine is sort of a dark ride followed by a roller coaster. Flug von Novgorod is very much the same. For whatever reason, even in the front row, this ride has none of the headbanging that other Gerstlauer Eurofighters seem to have.
Really?
And it has the over-the-shoulder restraints. Yeah. It's not because there's lap bars. But for whatever reason, this ride does not have the roughness that a ride like Mystery Mine or saw the ride at Thorpe Park in England was very rough in the front seat. Now, the Eurofighters all, in my experience, all seem to be smoother in the back row. Mystery Mine, definitely saw the ride. This one rode in the front seat, and this thing is butter smooth no matter where you sit, and I don't know why.
Yeah, it just didn't. Well, there's a lot of construction pics of it here. I'm trying to get through the construction pics. I don't know why either, because it looks like it has a lot of the same maneuvers as Mystery Mine or some of the other ones. It just why it's smoother is I have no idea.
No, it's something. So you start off with, now there are animatronics in the queue again. You're going through a castle, and Andy, I was tickled pink when. So okay, hold on. So you enter the
like
queue.
the hyper coaster you never built for one Brian Bass.
Yes, exactly like that. So you go. The queue line is outside, and it actually goes along like a tunnel, and it slowly goes downhill, and you go underground. Mm-hmm. And when you first go into underground, one of the first things you see as you enter the queue is 2 stained glass windows. Mm-hmm. And Andy, I had flashbacks to the day of Dueling Dragons, because they are animated stained glass windows telling you the story of the Curse of Novgorod. And I couldn't believe it. I was so happy. And I was so happy, even though we waited 45 minutes the first time around, and when we came back the second time around, it was still a 45-minute wait. I was so happy that I would get to stand in front of those stained glass windows again and watch it, because I don't have that experience anymore at Universal Orlando. So I was tickled pink to get that same experience here. So you do this dark ride show section area before the ride really gets going, just like Mystery Mine sort of does, and then you sort of go through the area, and so this ride has a launch. It has the vertical chain lift towards the end of the ride, but it starts off with the coaster part actually starts off with a launch, and if you look at RCDB, it says it's a rolling launch from roughly 0. It's not exactly 0, because you don't stop. You roll slowly out of the dark ride section into the launch, and then you just take off. So what happens is sort of like how you come out of Verbolten, mm-hmm. Verbolten's drop track into the second, where you sort of do a small little drop and then take off. This is sort of what that one does. You sort of drop down and then you take off. 0, roughly, to 62 miles an hour in 1.4 seconds. Now do the math on that. That's really fucking quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So this is the best comparison. And then at the end of the launch, you do a really tight, I think it's a left-hand turn. It's either a left or a right-hand turn.
Is there another Eurofighter with a launch?
So like Takabisha does. And then obviously the Takabisha clone that's in at American Dream in New Jersey has a launch.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think, like, where else would someone experience? Well, a Gerstlauer launch you get on Time Traveler now, but those aren't very powerful.
No, that's Mach.
Oh, that's Mach. Yeah. So where would we get a Gerstlauer launch at? Anywhere?
Fire Tracer has the little ones.
Oh, yeah.
So, and again, I'm completely sort of, again, it's been a few months, but you hit this launch, mm-hmm. You hit this launch, and then you hit a turn. And again, I'm not sure if it's a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn now. My memory is sort of escaping me because it's been a while. But the only comparison it felt exactly like when you sort of come in underneath the station on Maverick for that second launch, and you hit it and you just take off and you hit that hard left-hand turn on Maverick. That's the sensation that this launch has. Mm-hmm. And it's very, very strong and very, very intense. And you do this turn, and then you come up into this very steep, and if you're looking at pictures, you can see it. It's this very steep and tight airtime hill. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of airtime on it. And then you go through a few turns. You have like an overbank turn. You have sort of this pretzel-shaped turnaround. And then you do your barrel roll, which is your only inversion on the ride, which has some very good hang time. And then you hit and then you hit your vertical chain lift. So you go up your vertical chain lift. You've got some theming in there, just like you do on a ride like Mystery Mine. And you go up, you do the big drop, the past vertical drop, right? 97 degrees according to RCDB. And then immediately after that, there's this really weird hammerhead overbank turn that you float out of your seat, kind of like you do on some of the RMCs. It's really, really weird. And then you do a few things, and then the ride's over. It's certainly not a long ride in terms of length. It's just 2,300 feet. But boy, this ride is a rush, and it is a lot of fun. So if again, didn't get to ride Sverdruskærnen, but if Sverdruskærnen is an improvement and just that much bigger and better than Flug von Novgorod, based on, the size and stature and everything in terms of the theming. Boy, Sverdruskærnen is probably going to be a real treat, but Flug von Novgorod was good enough for a visit to this park all by itself. So again, a little bit of a disappointment that we didn't get to ride Sverdruskærnen, but I think that almost helped us appreciate this ride even more, because this is a very good signature ride. Well themed, very exciting, not rough. It's re-rideable. Just really nothing bad to say about this ride at all. And again, I know that roller coasters are a mechanical thing. It happens, and like I said, when you're on a big trip like this, you're gonna miss out on a couple here and there, whether it's weather or mechanical. So I don't have any real complaints about Hansa Park. I guess the best compliment I can give them is I hope they continue to grow at the rate they have the last 10 years. Flug von Novgorod was a 2009 ride. Schlange von Midgard was 2011. Sverdruskærnen was 2015. So it seems like they're sort of in a cadence where every 2 to 4 years they're putting in something of significance. So I hope that continues to be the case, because this is certainly one of these European parks that you need to keep an eye on, because they will probably continue to make some splashes here, I think.
Well, that's exciting, because like they have a nice lineup here, on the smaller side, but yeah, people have really raved about Sverdruskærnen for a while now, especially in the Thrilling 32. So, like you said, that's a reason to get back there. But if they build, one more thing, like, man, I'll tell you what, there's a nice little lineup, especially if you're saying all these little rides are kind of special too.
They have a great supporting cast. For sure. Sverdruskærnen, from many reports, sound like it is a very good signature ride as well. So, this is one of those things where, put in another big signature ride and continue with the supporting cast. I mean, this is one of these parks that could turn into like a Haida Park or an Efteling type park, where people really make it a point. Right now, it's sort of one of those parks where people go to if they have the chance to. But certainly seems like this is a park that should be on people's radar when you go over to Europe. This is a park that you want to include on your Germany trip for sure.
Yeah. So we are going to finish up there for this evening. We got a whole bunch more of some European stuff coming out. The noise came from over there. I don't know what that was. So we will be checking into some big parks here. We still got Europa on the list here. We still got what's
we've got Europa Park, Efteling, Haida Park, and then we'll have a combined show with Erlebnis Park Tripsdrill and Holiday Park, home of Expedition G-Force, former Thrilling 32 champion. So those are the four that you have to look forward to in the coming days here, in no particular order.
Awesome. So thank you for joining us here on COASTER-net Uncut. As always, I'm Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
Danny Miller from Binghamton, New York.
Right on, Red Warriors.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.